it. All right, so here we are in Culver City, and so you never knew about this park, right?
No, actually.
Yeah, and so there's a Baldwin Hill Scenic Overlook. I think it's actually like a federal sort of park up there. It's really nice. So I don't know if you want to go check it out afterwards. I don't know.
I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah, so it's a nice little thing. So the parks are kind of full right now. A lot of people out, just enjoying the weather. Supposedly it's supposed to cool down a bit coming up, which is going to be nice.
I would like that because it was literally sweltering the past 2 weeks. It was
so crazy, wasn't it?
Yes, and like hazy, full of smog.
Oh yeah, like the sky was orange, like we were totally in like a post-apocalyptic state. Like it felt like I felt like all of the sci-fi movies that have been made in like the past 60 years kind of were all enmeshed together.
Yeah.
Right? Like we had our pandemic, we had our violence in the streets and like all these riots. We had the sky was full of everything was there except for a robot coming and shooting down my door.
Agreed.
Which I'm sure we have about another 3 months left.
I'm pretty sure it'll happen.
All the check marks are going to be there,
Yeah.
So you were in Michigan was that a year?
About a year, yeah, since December.
All right, so
until August.
Was that the first time you left Los Angeles?
No, I lived in Cal Poly.
Oh, that's right.
The
first time you lived outside of California, though.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the first time.
I really liked Cal Poly. I think that if I was going to choose a place to live in California, I think
SLO.
Yeah, I think SLO would be a cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like that place. Yeah, it's got a good vibe to it.
It has a retirement vibe to it, but it's also paradise on earth. All I did was hike and surf daily.
It's also it's not too laid back like Cambria.
No.
Shit's still happening if you want it to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, just because there's still a lot of young people there and stuff like that. Every time I drive up to Northern California, I don't do it in one haul these days like I used to. Instead, what I do is I take the 101
and
I make it like a 2 or 3 day sort of trip.
That's the best.
And it's one of the nights I might stay in San Luis Obispo. That's one of the, and then might say Monterey the second night or something like that. And then I arrive and so yes, I could do it in 6 hours. But when I do it like that, then I break it up into 2-hour little spurts, which are very easy.
Yeah.
And I get to enjoy the coast, and it's just so lovely.
Amazing.
I really recommend people do that. My friend Larry, who had just lived here since the mid '80s, he's never driven He's never driven up the 101.
What?
I know, isn't that crazy?
That's
it's such a beautiful
central drive. That's part of what being a Californian is almost.
Yeah.
You have to do that.
Yeah, I was trying to convince him you need to take some time and do that. But it just hasn't happened. So tell me a bit more about what did you notice different about how people interface with you in Michigan or interact? I know you were spending most of the time studying.
They don't, to be honest. They are very kind and warm sort of people. But typically, if you're just walking around the street or in the park or somewhere, people I've noticed are more avoidative of you. They kind of keep their distance almost. I think that's just because of the cold. People don't really want to talk to you because they just want to keep going, from what I've seen.
Oh, interesting. Did you get any type of sort of weird? Let me back this up. What I found is that sometimes I'll go to places and then I'll find out that there's prejudice against me somewhere, I've never seen before, and
really?
It's so strange. Because I'm what the hell is this, right? I had no idea that people didn't. So.
I guess. I think that's just something that's more in your own head than anything. I think people will definitely spot that you're an outsider, that you're not from there. But.
I don't get it.
That's a passing
commonly,
thought to
it's
them.
just that every now and then, when I'm traveling, I'll be huh. That person don't like the fact that I was blank. Huh.
It's
so strange to me because as a white male, it's just something I'm not accustomed to coming across.
Right. I don't think I've really experienced that there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then again, it's a driving area. Like,
That's
people
right.
do not walk
That's right.
or interact
Most
with
of the
you.
country is heavily driving.
Yeah. So there was kind of a difference in just that there weren't as many people that I saw on a daily basis.
The only place in this country where I kind of felt like I was in a European city was in New York. That's it so far.
I mean, San Francisco, I would say, come close to that.
I once took a bicycle. No, I think it was twice up to San Francisco, and I bicycled around it. And it's such a pleasure to bike around. Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
You can get around super fast, and you don't have to deal with traffic. Oh, it's lovely. Yeah, I mean, I biked around Los Angeles, and it's okay, but San Francisco is
same.
super easy.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I think that it might be similar. I've never been to Boston, but I think that might actually cover it too. Have you ever been to Boston?
No. For some reason, there's something about Boston that kind of makes me allergic to the city. I don't know. I feel like Boston people have a very uppity attitude from what I've met.
That's what I've seen, but it's also the place of Harvard and MIT and all
I
the,
feel like
some of the, what?
You're making my point.
Well, what I mean is that, like, I think that you might find some very interesting conversations or
I'm
some
sure.
fascinating people there.
I'm sure.
And sure, there's probably some people that, got into those institutions based on pedigree, more than prestige. But there's a bunch of prestige there too. There's a bunch of people that are genuinely very clever and smart and insightful about the world, I would assume.
I have to visit sometime.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, I've really been meaning to. It's a very historic city too, right? Unlike the beautiful city that we see right here, like all of this. So I don't know if you can see it, but that's Century City, is that over there?
Yeah.
And then we have the Westwood with Santa Monica. Every single building here was built within the past 100 years. Probably within the past 70. Everything.
Probably even 50.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you look at the UCSB maintains these. I didn't start my timer. I always do that. So what was that? 10 minutes?
Yeah, just about.
This is my one trope. Oh, he hasn't started his timer again.
That's funny.
So, their UCSB maintains these aerial photographs
of LA.
It goes back to about 1927 or so.
Really?
And you can go to their website and it has little dots, and you click on them and download them.
Really?
And then sometimes you have to rotate them to try to figure out where things are. But like the freeways aren't there, the roads aren't labeled, and so you have to sort of piece together like where things are. And I found out that the road that I live on, the only thing that's been there since the first photograph are the trees. And the trees are so, the roots are so crazy that they make the sidewalk go all lumpity-lump.
Right.
Oh, terrible. And, I don't like it. Like, what the heck's up with these trees? But then I realized that they're the oldest things there. Older than any of the buildings.
Yeah. I mean, that's how young the city is. Really.
Yeah. But, it's also kind of interesting that to think that the only things that really survive are the fucking trees.
For the time being, yeah.
Right? Like the buildings get torn down and go back up, and every new contractor works around the trees.
I mean, the older the tree you have, I feel like that's a staple of your real estate here now. I mean...
The urban sort of treeing of the city was really done in the 60s or so.
60s, yep.
Right? When you look at the old pictures of downtown LA, it's very nice, but there's no trees.
There's no trees, yeah. People didn't really care for that.
Yeah. And so that really started in the 60s and 70s. So, yeah. So I'm sorry, I forget. Did we have a topic to discuss?
I had a topic to discuss. My topic was... Recently, I've actually been. It's a primitive topic, but I find it quite fascinating. Recently, I saw a documentary film called The Octopus Teacher, and it's basically about this guy who had this spout of depression. He's a cinematographer, wildlife photographer, and he lives in like this rocky coastline in South Africa. And what he did was he took his camera, and every day he would go out into the reef, into the kelp, and videotape animals that he saw. And one of the days he encountered this little common octopus, and he tried to kind of, play with it and see if it would be scared of him. So he had this idea of what would it be like if he came to that exact same spot for every single day of the rest of the octopus's life, and how that would kind of affect their relationship. And from what he noticed, octopuses are...
Is it octopi or octopus?
No, it's actually octopuses from what I've heard. Right. But they have a sense of play, which is a sign of very high levels of intelligence, just like crows or dolphins. And he got such an intimate relationship with it that eventually it would be able to just kind of crawl up onto him and just rest on him for hours and hours and hours.
Crows love games. Which
is a very strange behavior for any wild animal, let alone a mollusk. But it got me to thinking, we as humans tend to value intrinsically higher levels of intelligence. Specifically, we have this assumption that just by the basis of our ability to have a sense of consciousness that we do, that makes us superior in the world, right? But
I think that it's more that we assign value to it based on that.
Right, we do assign value to it.
And I think that comes from colonialism.
I agree. But specifically what I was wondering about was, what is it like to experience reality through a less intelligent being? And does that...
Well, I can speak to that.
But what does that really mean in terms of life, death, time, our perception of it, and really, like, how is it that we operate? Because I feel like there's, for instance, when you have a dog, right? People kind of tend to anthropomorphize it, and assign, oh, this is my dog, Sparky. He likes me. He knows who I am. But that's all we really do. Do we really think that our dog, for instance, has a consciousness of its own, right? Like, that's kind of what I've been thinking about. I feel like even ants, to some degree, have some sort of, like an autopilot of sorts. They see the world, but they understand it to some degree.
So this is a very a lot of ink has been spilled on this question.
Right.
I'm sure that you know. From the stuff that I've seen and read, I think that my opinion is that anthropomorphizing any creature robs them of their uniqueness and their individuality.
Yeah.
So, in the same way that a blind person can't understand sight in the sense of like hearing and taste, right? It's that whenever we try to assign characteristics to these animals that are so different from us through the ones that we understand, it's kind of like that same thing. We're not, we can only sort of have this, crude mockery of what their true it is. And I don't think that, I think it's an unresolvable question.
It really is, but it's almost a cyclical thought, because we can really never answer it. I mean, how would you put yourself into the shoes of an octopus, or into the tentacles?
I mean, certain things you can't answer, and so like,
but
they've studied the brains of lots of creatures, and they can like determine whether they dream or whether they are, they're sexually interested, or whether they can recognize some, so these are sort of like baseline things. and there is similarity between how all of us operate as organisms.
I agree. I mean, there is a sort of baseline similarity, but the question is, when we go down, if we assume that humans are at the top of the pyramid in terms of intelligence, as far as life beings are, if we start going down the steps...
That's by whom? Humans?
Correct, right? But if we start going down the ranks, let's say to an elephant,
okay.
Will that make existence in itself more enjoyable or pleasurable, or even if you can assign such a value to such a being? Like, is intelligence in itself something that makes life more meaningful?
I've long thought that humans are smart enough to do all of the great things that we see around us, and that's fantastic.
Right.
But they're not smart enough to go to the next level. They're not smart enough to distribute goods in such a way that we don't have homeless people, or they're not smart enough to resolve their differences in a way that doesn't lead to wars.
Right.
Or any of these other things. Is that it really sort of speaks to Darwin, right?
It does.
That we're just at the level of like the minimal amount necessary to form these complex cultures and societies, but for whatever reason we haven't sort of taken that next step, because it hasn't mattered for our survival, in order to get to a higher plane of development.
Right.
And it's just, and somehow we, as humans, we barely survive all of these issues that we do. We come up with nuclear weapons, and we just skate on by, nuclear war or whatever it is, right?
Right.
And every now and then, we're right on the other side, like an island nation, and we collapse, and all of us die off, or whatever it is. But it's just on the border. It's the margins are super thin.
If there is a border, right? Let's assume that you're correct in that there is a sort of border region that we haven't crossed yet to perfection, if you will. A more intelligent being. Is that really the case, that if we just increase the levels of intelligence exponentially, do we increase less suffering? Do we increase our happiness? That's my question.
Well, I mean, we have to get to the line of intelligence at that point, which is also a very debated term.
Sure.
Right? Hey, are we both in frame right now? Yes. Good. Thanks. I can never tell. Is intelligence what is that? That's also something that lots of ink has been spilled upon.
That is a very broad question, but I'm specifically trying to avoid that topic.
Well, we have to get somewhere on that, and without going to too many details. So something like, let's just say that intelligence means a more nuanced understanding and appreciation and ability to react to the environment around them. Okay?
Okay.
Sounds good.
That's broad enough. Sure.
All right.
Okay.
And so if that's what we're talking about, I think that I don't know, it's hard.
See, because I feel sometimes that if I had been born, for instance, a pigeon,
Right.
maybe my life would be far more meaningful than it is as I am now. And that's a strange question because, at common thought, you would just assume that something of a lesser form would never be capable of achieving such a thing. But
No, I agree with you on that. Is that it's almost like that the pigeon is more integral to the flows of life than we are.
Yeah.
We're sort of the disease on top of everything.
We are an aberration, if you will. Yeah. It's an interesting question.
The plants are going to be fine without us.
Correct. And I guess, I'm a person specifically, the reason why I asked myself this is because I think a core of my existence who I am, if anyone knows who I am, is that I'm an elitist. And what I value often is an intelligent person to have a conversation with. I have looked down historically on people who I find of less intellect, who are less educated, and so forth and so forth. But then, at the
That's
same,
a mistake.
it's a mistake.
You shouldn't do that.
It's a mistake. But
I mean, wisdom comes from foolishness.
sure, sure.
Continue.
But at the same time, there's this sort of like purity that comes from what we would characterize as less intelligent life forms.
There's a flow to it.
There's a flow to it. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily less intelligent. There's a difference between sort of the ability to do and the ability to stop and think, if you will, right? Is that like somebody who is maybe a beautiful dancer or a beautiful musician, right? They're not really thinking in the way that we would consider thinking.
That's exactly it, right? It's instinctual almost.
Yeah, and we fully understand that somebody could be a beautiful dancer, but also not, be able to solve a physics problem. Right?
Sure.
And so, like, is that I would probably say that that's a more fulfilling life, is people that have those types of
that's really
they tend to live longer.
Yeah.
And they tend to be happy. There's some of the survivorship bias, right? Is that you see old people, they drive really slowly and they're all like joyful and happy, and it's like, yeah, that's because all the fast drivers that were miserable are dead by the time they're 80, right? Yeah. And so there's this sort of like bias that we have, because like the only people that live until they're 90 are the people that take it careful and go slowly.
That is the case. See, like, even Socrates to his very last day was struggling with these ethical dilemmas constantly, and these are things that if you're a person who has little cares, who is less educated, or is just not exposed to issues of any kind, you would never care about that, and your life would be blissful almost. But
would it? I mean, just because you don't have concerns of that frame doesn't mean that you don't have concerns of other frames.
Sure.
So, for instance, let's just be very sort of juvenile and just assume that we have somebody who's very stupid, right?
Okay.
A dunderhead, right?
Sure.
And you talk with them, and they're very worried about what's going to happen on the next, episode of Days of Our Lives. Will Grace get back with Mark or whatever?
Right.
And like that fully enraptures them, right? And they're very miserable if it doesn't come out. That's what I'm saying, is that they have their own world upon which those emotions are reflected upon.
Right. It's just, okay. It seems, though, that we as intelligent beings have almost...
Before you go on, I've been wanting to do this for years. I've been wanting to somehow swap out, when you're at the grocery store, they always have
switch places?
No, and they have like Entertainment Weekly and Us Magazine and stuff like that.
Okay.
Like I wanted to put like Cell, Science, all these like academic publications up there. Just swap them out, because they're always like, celebrity gossip and all this crap. Like none of them have any kind of depth to them. So.
Sure.
Anyway, as you were saying.
I was saying that. I think we've only meddled with our own existence by being more intelligent. It's kind of like a curse, if you will.
Is it really?
Yeah, because
half of us would be dead if we didn't have that.
But at the same time, I feel like we're causing our own demise.
Yeah, of course.
But my question also is that, what is that attributable to? Is that
it's what I said beforehand? Is that we're smart enough to survive, but not smart enough to thrive?
I'm skeptical of that, actually. I feel like it's not that we're lacking something.
Okay. So let's just presume that there is a more intelligent species out there, and I hope the microphone's picking. And let's say in like, I don't know, 1975, when people were saying, we believe that carbon CO2 is going to cause climate change and all of these terrible things.
Right.
A very intelligent species would be like, then we should shut down all the fossil fuels. We should put all of our resources, and they would, and if we were all very smart about it, we'd be in a much better shape right now, right? Or like, let's say politics, right? And then people would say, we wouldn't have Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Instead, we'd have, these very eloquent statesmen that can, somebody like maybe a less politicized version of Noam Chomsky, a very, very bright and smart person that can lay things out, and then those would be our politicians, right? Like, this is what I'm saying, we wouldn't be putting all this money into nuclear weapons. Instead, we would figure out a way to have, excellent diplomacy that wouldn't have, yes, we would be in a much better shape if we were all smarter.
But the assumption
I think that part of it is that it's part of the variation of human existence. Is that there's a lot of people that just are on the left side of that destruction intelligence level, and there's some people that are on the survivorship side, the thriving side, and collectively as a whole, I don't know where we are.
Sure.
But okay. I hate to say that there's some people that are smarter than others because that sounds elitist. But
that's the case.
I don't think that. I think it's an unavoidable conclusion.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's like a basic assumption of life. But what I was saying is that the assumption that we're missing something that's not yet there is a sort of linear understanding of evolution.
What do you mean?
Well, that we haven't evolved yet to like a higher level of existence where we're not making the same mistakes that we do now. I think history has shown that that's not the case.
No, I'm saying that it's a consequence of things. I don't think we're ever going to get there as a species, just because we are. I think that our sort of ability as a human that sets us apart from all the other species is our ability to organize and communicate and do things collectively and socialize. I think that we have a level that is just unheard of. The fact that you see, I don't know, last night there's raccoons that were like digging little things outside my window, and they were barking at each other and yelling. And then a few days ago there were squirrels, and they were bickering with each other over I don't know, peanuts or whatever it is, right? But somehow, we've been able to construct societies that built all of this.
I know.
This is through communication. This is humans' ability. It's not our intelligence. It's our ability to communicate.
It's kind of poetic, actually, that we're talking about this here, of all places, because, well, okay, put it this way. My kind of thought on this was...
Make sure you stay in front.
Not so much that we're lacking something, but that we have something that is a negative trait. I think that at a certain point in time in our evolution, thousands and thousands of years ago, we fell into this track of rapid growth of some sort. Prior to us being hunters, where we started eating meat, we were hunters and gatherers. There was very little growth in terms of our neurological capacity in our minds, and we weren't building civilizations, so the timeline was far more spread out. But at the same time, we weren't destroying the environment around us. We weren't, causing global pandemics. We weren't.
It's all arguable. It's all arguable.
It is arguable.
I mean, there's increasing evidence to support the idea that people during the Bronze Age, through destructive farming processes, created the Sahara Desert.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Sahara Desert.
Right. The Sahara Desert might be man-made.
Wow.
Through thousands of years of bad farming, and topsoil erosions and all those things like that. So
Right.
I mean, I don't think that we are in some kind of unique state right now, except for the fact that we have mastered oil and energy. But other than that, I don't really buy that entire premise. And probably the only thing that led to us forming these types of cities, it was climate change. It was that we needed to go to agriculture. Is that we needed to learn how to store food and do all these other things because we just didn't have it as accessible. So that was like that's why those things happened after the Bronze Age collapse during the Little Ice Age when we went to that.
That's kind of actually proving my point. The way that we got started on this was purely circumstantial, right? I'm saying
we had to.
This track began out of the decline of the Ice Age and, humans having a more sedentary sort of existence. They started planting roots, planting crops, and eventually civilization.
Well, yeah, I mean, but need dictates actions much more than want.
I agree.
You don't have to be like David Hume to come up with that conclusion.
No, of course. But you don't see that with any other being, right? I mean, granted, we were in a uniquely positioned place to take advantage of that sort of environmental change, right? But it seems like
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Basically, what you're saying is that, we have, 18 mountain lions left in the hills or whatever.
Correct.
And it's not like the mountain lions are somehow getting together and then, figuring out how to do, some kind of mountain lion civilization.
No.
Yeah, there's no other creatures that are doing that.
No.
Even though they're all threatened right now.
Correct.
In the same way that we were threatened.
Correct.
But we responded in very creative ways that led to cities, right?
Correct.
We are... most species are unusually threatened right now, and they're just dying off.
Exactly.
As far as I know. I mean, maybe there are some that I have no idea.
I don't think so.
I welcome the rise of our insect masters. Maybe it's cool.
Sure you would. It just seems that we've sort of internalized. I'm not sure what trait I would describe it to be, but it's almost a malicious trait of some sort, a destructive one, if you will, that comes with being intelligent. That
I think so. I mean, all creatures are malicious and destructive.
Well, I think that's kind of the point that I'm making, right? Which is even the octopus, right? What does the octopus benefit from by being intelligent? What does it get out of that?
I don't study anthropology.
But
I have no idea.
if you would, think of
I would assume that it can hide from predators much better.
hide from predators, hunt
Yeah.
better, and grow.
Solve riddles, maybe.
It then would be able to reproduce faster. There would be more octopuses in the environment.
I don't know. I don't know if those types of base level logics are valid. I think that they form nice narrative structures that seem to work most of the time, but in the same way that I think they're about as valid as people that talk about the neoliberal capitalism. And then you know what I mean? Like they'll come up with something and then they'll be like, oh, that's because of and they come up with a story behind it to talk about how it's supply and demand and logical actors making rational decisions and blah 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 blah. And you're like, you can, and you're like, okay, cool. You can come up with any religious story or you can come up with anything you want to, but that doesn't make it true.
I agree. What I am saying though is that there is a common set of characteristics that you can identify over these sorts of fact patterns that we have, right? That I'm talking about. Intelligent beings. If you just apply the same basic logic across the board, let's say ants, for instance, right? They're much less intelligent than an octopus. What can an ant achieve from gaining more intelligence? Because it is more intelligent than a lot of its insect peers.
I think ants. I think that our idea of what the most successful species is highly flawed. I would say that grass is much more successful than humans are.
That's interesting. That's also a good point of discussion.
And ants are probably much more successful too. I don't know. I would say that even things like squirrels. I mean, no, it's real. Like if I like in the city, when you go around, you don't see bears or reindeer or anything like that, but you do see opossums, skunks, squirrels, birds. Like those creatures have somehow managed to thrive in this terribly destructive, apocalyptic environment that we call the city.
Yeah,
they're doing fine.
Yeah,
rats, cockroaches. Those are probably much more successful than humans are.
I would agree. Here's a question though. What does make a species successful?
I can't get rid of them.
Can't get rid of them.
Flies.
See, but okay, that's something that we would characterize for an animal, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's a lot of them and they never seem to disappear.
It's true,
They
yes.
reproduce and they're abundant, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not endangered.
No.
You would characterize the panda, for instance, that has a horrible reproductive cycle as being a failed species in comparison. As a rabbit, for instance, that
Probably.
breed like rabbits, right?
Yeah, probably.
But if I were to ask you what makes the human race a successful species, changes.
I think that's still up in the air, The reason that we have so many people right now is because of our ability to make synthetic nitrates and create,
fertilizer.
It's true. You're able to create like fourfold the amount of food in the past 100 years, and we've quadrupled our population.
But
it's we increased our carrying capacity by enormous amounts by our synthetic nitrates.
But if we were to pinpoint an underlying point that we're trying to strive for, just as an ant wants to make a giant ant colony, as many ants as possible, what is it for humans?
We don't have it.
Do we? Not? I feel like we might.
I mean, maybe Gene Roddenberry knows something, but
okay.
He's the creator of Star Trek, by the way.
Yes.
No, I don't. I think that life's a dance. You just try to enjoy it, and then you die. I mean, I don't know,
but that's on a micro level.
Right, but macro level as a society, I don't think so. I mean, what's the goal of all this crap?
That's
right?
really my question, because I don't know.
It's not to any ends. I mean, we're not going towards anything really. We're just trying to survive, and we've just made it very complicated to survive. It's very it's much harder than it should be. We have to buy cars and live in apartments and get jobs and go to school and all of these silly things.
So your thesis is that we've complexified we made more complex the ant colony.
Yeah. Of course.
Interesting way of looking at that.
I mean, look at this. So what are these that building, all of that thing that's just Sony Pictures. They just make entertainment, not very good movies.
Right.
They're just doing entertainment.
Right.
That's all they do. That's really of no crazy value. I mean, they don't even make meaningful analysis of the world. They're not making good literature. They're making the most fluffy entertainment. All of these things. It's all nonsense. There's very few things here that are creating lasting value.
But
even the buildings themselves, right?
What would be
none of these buildings are made of stones or rocks. 100 years from now, all these buildings will be gone.
What would be of no value to an ant has a lot of value to us, right? An entertainment center, right? That Sony is has value in our existence, where to a lesser form of intelligence it wouldn't. It seems like, yes, we've made the ant colony a little bit more varied in some sense. Mm-hmm. Whereas, okay, you can pretty much it doesn't take a genius to see what ants are trying to get at, right? But once you've added a level of consciousness to it, a high level of consciousness, you've expanded. It's much harder to discern what it is that we are trying to achieve. If we were ants on a macro level and you had a much larger being observing us, what would they say that we're trying to achieve?
Nothing.
I
mean, look, you can have a lot of complexity without a lot of intelligence. Like the orb weaver spiders, they make these great, wonderful structures, and nobody would say, spiders are great problem solvers or necessarily, have high intelligence, or understand the geometric rules upon, how they weave the orb.
I mean, that is the case, but maybe you are right in some sense that it's...
This is what we're doing. We don't have awareness of any of it. Clearly we don't. Well, if we did, we'd go back to the other thing. Why would we still be having these fucking private cars? It's ridiculous. So they're dangerous, expensive, slow.
Well, if we have no awareness of it, why are we doing it?
Same reason as the spiders making spider web. And the ants are doing the anthill.
They're pre-programmed to do that?
Kind of, yeah. They just do it.
But you see, like that's more
like a plant grows, right? The plant's not...
But does a plant become so much more infinitely complex as humans are?
I mean, do you think the plant proactively decides where to grow the leaves? I mean,
So, that's interesting, actually. So you think that we don't have a proactive ability in our evolution whatsoever?
I think most of it's an illusion. I think that part of what we do, or what makes us so great as humans, you keep... Do you want to be on camera or not? Is that we have this very powerful delusion where, and I think that's essential for humanity, is that we have a self-awareness of death and disease and all these terrible things. And the only reason that we don't sort of kill ourselves immediately is because we have this very powerful delusion ability. And the powerful delusion allows us to have imagination, creativity. It allows us to see a rock and then think of, 17 steps from here I'll have this wonderful tool that doesn't exist before, right? And there's plenty of creatures that can take a rock and make a tool out of it, but none of them can craft the kind of beautiful tool like a hammer or something like that, right? And so this kind of imaginative delusion, this narrative that we have, is one of the things that is the other thing that makes us humans, is our ability to lie to ourselves and not realize it.
That is a very... I've never thought about it that way, actually. But
all of the wars on nationalism. You're dying for a flag. What the fuck are you doing, right? How absurd, right?
Well, it's not the flag. You're dying for what is
an idea.
Idea behind
yeah, it's a. Why would you kill yourself? But all of those types of religions or any type of con artist or huckster out there, all of those people, money itself, right? That we place value in this piece of paper, right? Yeah. All of that is all delusional at a core level, but it works because we're delusional creatures.
What was interesting,
and we wouldn't have been able to create any of this without delusion.
I agree. It seemed, what was interesting about the octopus towards the end, I'll spoil it. The octopus dies eventually, right? An average octopus lives for about a year.
Oh wow! I didn't know
It's quite short. Okay. For most mollusks, it's even shorter than that.
Oh, interesting.
It's a very quick reproductive cycle.
Oh, interesting.
But it was really fascinating because if you have such a creature that is so intelligent amongst other, creatures in its environment, but it has such a short lifespan.
Yeah, a human at 6 months can't do shit.
Can't do shit. But towards the end, The octopus was bitten by one of these pajama sharks. One of its arms was bitten off, and the guy was thinking surely it was going to die, right? And it became all pale, and it hid away, and it wouldn't come out.
Right.
And it seemed like the octopus knew that it was going to die.
Probably.
What is that like to have such a short existence, a much shorter than we do existence, but at the same time know that you're gonna die? It's almost like you're setting up like a hyper speed on a human life.
Kind of. I mean, humans are fairly unique in that they are born useless.
Right.
Completely, utterly useless.
Yes.
They can't walk. They can't do anything. Not only that, but if you're trying to hide from predators, the baby is not what you want to have around. It's going to yell and scream and just give your location. Like they're counterproductive.
Sure.
And so it's this strange thing. Like, it's another one of our unique positioning. The only reason that ever works is because of, again, our ability to socialize and work together. Right? And that's fairly like nothing else is like that. I remember when I was a child, we got a cat, right?
Okay.
And this cat had been alive for 2 days, and all of a sudden it knew how to use a litter box, and it knew everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was potty trained, like right away, no problem.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, how can you ever conclude that humans are smarter than cats?
I'm not sure I would be able to, but suppose if we were to shrink our lives down, if the human life was just as intelligent as it is, same as it is now, except we only live for 10 years.
Okay.
If you were to make our metabolism much faster than it is now, how would that affect our perception of reality?
I don't think it would.
You don't think it would?
No.
Why not?
Because I think that we fundamentally lie to ourselves, and we always think that there will be a tomorrow when we know that there may not be, and we know that the dice are increasingly loaded against us with every day, and that we all, if you've lived to about the age of 30, you all know people that were in your age group that died from terrible things. Maybe a car accident or some awful disease or drugs or something like that.
Yeah.
But we all think that it's not going to happen to us. And if you reduce that, I don't think it's going to change. I think that we would continue to be deluded in the same way.
I think that's probably the correct answer, honestly. I was thinking, what would it be like for a cave person about 10,000 years ago? They lived till the age of 20, 25. Often they did, though. War, disease. They had food to scavenge for.
Well, yeah, but it was probably, okay, whatever the number is. Okay, they lived
much lower.
And not only that, but we don't really have an intimate familiarity with death in our culture. We've really sort of separated that from the world we live in. Other cultures, they may bury their dead out in their backyard, or they may have photographs of the dead around as memories. They have this much sort of more integral connectedness to them, while we kind of just move on eventually, right?
It made me think, one of the things that I wanted to do, I really almost did when I was 19. Really, I'll get to my point after this, but I almost was a war journalist. I almost left. I bought a ticket, and I was going to go to Eastern Ukraine and document death as much as I possibly
I'm presuming
could.
this place is shutting down soon because all these cars seem to know what they're doing. They're leaving. So
that's all right.
We got about 5 minutes, and then
let's
end it then.
But I was kind of enthralled by doing that, and my quest was to enrich my life by being intimately familiar with death as much as I possibly could. If I faced death, saw what it looked like at all times, then maybe I would live a more intelligent life.
I don't know. There's this performer that works at a morgue, and he has an administrative job. And so his job is to basically call people up and say something like, I'm sorry, I can't release the body until we have the sign off from the doctors.
God.
And they closed, and it's a 3-day weekend, and so you have to call back again on Monday.
Yeah.
And the person's like, I'm sorry, it's the state law, like we can't do that,
Yeah.
And like he's doing like the red tape paperwork
For these family members.
And like and I hear his stories, and they're just crazy. And like, why do you have this? Why is this your career?
Yeah.
I don't know if he had an answer, but yeah, I mean, you could do that if you want.
Well, really, the point is,
suppose it pays well.
If the octopus, for instance, knows rather quickly that it's going to die, right? It has a short lifespan.
Yeah.
Its whole existence is battling death, avoiding it, right? The predators all around. It's not like humans. I mean,
we don't have to worry about death.
We really don't,
No.
right?
Even now, when we should be worrying about death, we're not even doing it.
It really wouldn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what? How? I feel like there is some sort of benefit of doing that.
Of always being concerned with your death.
Yeah. See, it seems like that might be a lacking of our evolution.
I mean,
definitionally, what we've done, the industrial
you can test
revolution.
this.
Sure.
So, I mean, the question is, are post-war cultures catastrophic wars, World War
Right.
II, World War I,
Sure.
stuff like that, because they would certainly be much more familiar with the
Concept of death.
the finality of life.
Right.
Or like people that, I don't know, post, not the kind of pandemic we're having, but, ones that are real pandemics,
Yeah.
where you see death in the streets, historically speaking.
Cholera.
Yeah,
Sure.
those types of terrible
Yeah.
things. Do you see the kinds of systems that you're talking about?
Do
Utterly
we?
testable.
Not
I
really.
don't know.
Not really.
I think you'd have to do some serious research. I don't know if you could come up with an answer just sitting here.
No. I mean, it's a thought experiment, though. It's an unanswered question.
I don't know. Any closing thoughts
Closing thoughts.
before they close the fence on us?
Well,
I don't know if we'll be able to get to the higher point today.
I feel like I strive now to be more like an octopus, if you will. A simpler being, but also...
Death is always on the doorstep. I mean, yes.
Yeah, a more aware one, I guess, in some animalistic sense.
Yeah. The problem with any of those cognitive things of awareness is that you have to integrate it into your being, and that's the hard part.
You can't do that.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're only aware of it when you're aware of it. You can't ever when you're not thinking about it also have it. That's the hard thing. Is that you got to train yourself somehow.
The tragedy of man.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. We can only enculturate ourselves so far. Anyway, I think it's super dark. Look, there's a tow truck down there.
I think someone...
Is that your car?
No. Well, I did park there, but
Yeah.
they stalled